Welcome back to SK Hobbies, AZ and I am Stitch. We are starting a new series, and I did a little bit of a live and talked a little bit about this in a live. But on this one, we are going to start a new series about the SCX24s and our hard body builds with these model kits. You're not going to want to miss this, so stay tuned. All right, we're going to be doing a new series. Yes, so we're going to be starting with these SCX24s. You can see I've got 3 of them on here. We're going to do 3 episodes talking about each one of these. Now, their underneath is about the same. So the base, we're going to cover that, but in the additional episodes, we won't talk as in depth on what's underneath, except for the differences between the 3. I'll have the other 2 kind of setting off to the side where you'll be able to see them as we talk through each one of these builds. But primarily, what we're going to concentrate on this is the model kit on top and what we did to get this built. I do have some pictures along the way, so we'll talk a little bit and we'll bring up some of those pictures along the way on this build. Well, let's get to it. So the first one we're going to talk about is this green one right here. And with that being said, we use this model kit right here. So this is the 1965 Chevy step-side pickup. Picked it up at a local hobby shop and it turned out amazing. We got a full interior in it. We did a little bit of painting in the bed, and we did a lot when it came down to mounting this to the SCX24. So give me a minute, I'll be right back, and we'll have the green Chevy step-side right here in the middle. All right, so yes, these are magnetic. You can see you can kind of lift it up and the magnet stays, but you can just pull that body off. Before we start talking about this body, let's talk about underneath. You can see we've got a nice Furatech build under here. Not a lot of this is still stock from the stock SCX24. Primarily, the only thing that's stock is your axle shafts in the axle and also the rear stock gearing. So the rear gears are stock from the axial SCX24. Everything else has been modified and upgraded. So with that being said, let's talk about the chassis. So we have a Furatech Scythe carbon fiber rail chassis kit. Now, this is a little bit different than their regular Scythe. The regular Scythe has the little cage over the top of it. And I can kind of show that to you right now. So this is the standard Scythe chassis that Furatech came out with. So it's a standalone. It makes it look like a rock racing buggy. It's not necessarily a rock racer. This is a pretty good performance crawler. This is my son's rig. So you can see it's got the little cage kind of addition on the top, and it has a hard cover on it that kind of encloses all the electronics in there. But what these carbon fiber rail kits, it does is just the rails underneath. And it makes that amazing because what we can do is we can mount any body on it. Not saying that you can't mount a body on top of this, which I actually have a body right here. And you can actually, you could mount it right on top of there and cover that up. That's actually going to happen in the future. In a future build, we're going to actually mount this bad boy on here and we'll see how this guy performs with that body. But this episode's not about that. It's about this bad boy. So we've got that carbon fiber rail chassis. The rest of the Furatech stuff that's in here is, which is the Furatech Komodo motor and the Stellar transmission. And this motor is actually a 1400 kV Outrunner style motor. And the model number of this bad boy is the 2204. So it's not they have a newer style out. And I'll put that information up on the screen over here of what the newer one that they have and a picture of that. But this one we've had for about a year. This build's been around for a little while. So with that being said, we've got this bad boy. We wanted to do a hard body build on it, so we put that in there. The ESC that's in here is the Furatech Ultimate Lizard ESC, or the Lizard Ultimate ESC. It's a 40 amp for a brushed system, 70 amp for a brushless system. So you can actually buy this ESC and put it in and put a brushed motor on it. There's an app you can download. You can change all that stuff around. You can change your output for your voltage to your servos through the. It has like you can change the ESC voltage in there that supplies to your servo. Speaking of that, let's continue on with electronics, and we get up to the servo. So this servo, and I use primarily 2 different types of servos in all 3 of these rigs, but they're the same servo. It's just one of them is, and I believe it's in the blue one here, right here, and it is, if you can see it, that is the Mighty Chihuahua, and we'll talk about that in another episode. But the Mighty Chihuahua is a Reefs RC 99 micro. It's just got CCXRC's branding on it that Reefs RC did for them. But we're running the 99 micro up front. Moving on with other things that are CCXRC, we have the Baby Hippo brass axles, and those brass axles add a little bit more weight. That we also have CCXRC's diff cover on both the front and the rear. And with having that additional weight, it's adding about 64 grams of weight down low. We're going to put it on a scale at the end of this, and we'll show you what the weight distribution is with this rig, and then we'll add the body to it to see what the overall weight and what it adds to the build. The other thing that is CCXRC is I have 23% overdrive gears in the front. It makes the wheels turn at a different speed, so the front wheels are going to be moving at a different speed than your rear wheels. And actually, I believe it turns a little bit faster. But you guys will see how that operates when we do a run video on all 3 of these. Now that we've talked about everything that we have Furatech in this rig, we've talked about everything that we've had CCXRC in this rig, let's jump into the rest of the rig. Let's talk about the Endura parts that we have in here. So, the shocks. These shocks are the 43 millimeter double action, double barrel, however you want to call it, shocks. I do have springs on this. They are the black springs, so they're the lightest ones that you can get, and that just adds a little bit of pushback on these when they're operating. Also, the high clearance links. So these are the aluminum high clearance links by Endura, and you can see those in there. So they add a little bit more clearance underneath. Also, the skid plate is aluminum by Endura, and we have that. Also, we have the brass knuckles that are right here. Those are Endura, and those brass knuckles are adding about 9 grams each. So I'm putting 18 additional grams of weight up front. Also in the rear, I have kind of weighted hex extensions up front. And we'll talk about those when we get to the next set of parts that we're going in. But on the rear, you'll see that I had to put in the plus 5 millimeter extensions on the rear to get the wheelbase the same of the plus 5 up front. And those hex extensions are by Endura too. So we have those. So now that we've talked about that, let's talk about the Trill parts that we incorporated into this rig. So Trill wise, like I said about the hex extensions in the rear that are aluminum, in the front we have the brass wheel spacers. So what they are weighted, and it's adding about 12 grams of weight each. So I'm adding an additional 24 grams of weight up front. So with adding that additional weight up front, it's making it to where it's it's heavier in that front, and we'll see it when we get it on a scale. So that is plus 5 millimeters extensions to equate with the extensions I put in the rear. So now we've talked about all the brass that I have up in front. The only other Trill thing that we can talk about is the rims or the wheels. So these wheels are Trill. They do have a little bit of brass in them, and it adds about 22.4 grams of weight per wheel. So there's another 44.8 grams of weight up front, but we also have that same weight in the rear. And what's adding that weight is they are an aluminum rim, but that beadlock inner ring that's in there is brass, and that's adding some additional weight. But we'll see how much weight we're actually adding in total to the front. So also the servo mount up front is the Trill servo mount. I'm actually in the process of ordering some of the best servo mount ever from Mofo RC. And we're going to try one of those out on the channel because I don't have one of those yet. But I heard that servo mount is awesome. The upper link mount on the rear is also Trill. And it's a little bit different style. I like it because it's individual spots for each. I'm not running like one long bolt through it like on some of my other rear hinge mounts, or it screws to the outside of the upper link mount, and that is also brass, and that's adding about 3.9 grams of brass to the rear there. So now that we've talked about that, tires. So these are a new style of tire, and not necessarily a style, it's a new diameter of tire that Little Guy Racing Parts is making. So these are Swamp Kings, just like the Swamp Kings that are over here. It's the same tread pattern, same look and design, except for their narrow, or I guess the diameter is smaller. It's only 57 millimeters wide, so you can get these in more on a more scaled build and be able to still have the tread and the grippiness and the compound that's in this rubber. You can still get them, so they're awesome. And we'll see how those handle on the rocks when we get this bad boy on the rocks. All right, so the last thing that we added in this chassis is these brass boulder bars, and they are by Mofo RC, and it's adding around 7 grams per side, so a total of 14 grams of low weight in the center to keep everything down. Out of all 3 of these, this is the only one that's running those boulder bars, so we can see the difference between the other ones when they perform. Talking about how I'm going to mount this body. Before we get into the body, basically we mounted them with magnets, and you can get them off of Amazon, and I'll put up a picture of where I got them on Amazon, and there'll be a link in the description. They're just small little magnets. You can see I kind of glued them into place, and what I used was a thin sheet of styrene, and that styrene is the 060 sheet of styrene. And I've got some, like, so you get this sheet and it comes like this, and it's flexible, it's really thin. I love using these for design purposes. I even have, I cut chunks of it off to make and work on these projects. And basically I cut 2 pieces about, I want to say probably a 1/2 inch in wide, and then basically cut it to the width of the chassis rails, and I glued those on place there and on the back, and then I glued the magnets on top of those 2 pieces of styrene, and then from there I used it to mount this. Now I did the same up on here, and you have to adjust your height because there's more depth right here on this side to this to get this thing to mount level, right? Because you want it to look right? You don't want it to set up at an angle or, be down in the nose, unless that's the look you're looking for. But basically I did the same, cut about a 1/2 inch of the styrene to the width of the bed, and also to be able to fit underneath here, and basically just kept adding additional pieces of styrene. until I got the level properly, and I was not getting tire rub. Now also because of the interior in there, you have to have it at a certain height, so it's not, you know, your motor and everything isn't hitting, so that's where I ended up at this height. So it's kind of like almost at monster truck height, but still, you're going to be able to get a pretty dang good angle climb on this bad boy. And we'll see how it performs out on the course. So also with that, I did these little sidewalls around, and that is basically so it covers up the magnets, the dual height of the magnets that are sitting there, so you can't really see them from the side. If you look at that. And everything's blacked out. And so I just kept adding it until I got it to where it was all the way up, touching the top of the styrene up here, around these edges, and we were good. So let's talk about the body. So with this body, you know, you get it in the kit, and it comes completely, you know, in the, I think this was all solid white. Now, the front cab piece and this back piece, they actually mount to the chassis that comes in this box. And with that being said, I needed it as one piece. So how I accomplished that was actually using some more of the styrene. We took the styrene and I cut it to the width of the back piece that's back here on the back side of the model. And I used 2 of those pieces glued together and glued it in there, glued it to the back of the truck bed, and then glued that to the back wall of the cab. And then position that in place. Actually, I set it down on the table to get the right height and held it in place using CA glue. I think all of this was done with CA glue. So I got that done. Now the other thing is this rear bumper. So the rear bumper on here actually attaches to the chassis when on the model kit. We didn't do it that way on this one. This one I did a little bit differently, but we'll get to that one when we talk about that model. So with that, I needed to glue this on the back side so it looked like it had a bumper. I used styrene, so on the back side underneath of the truck bed, I put a couple of pieces of styrene there that oversticked to the width of the bumper, and then basically stuck the bumper on there and then glued it from underneath and glued the bumper in place, and it's in there pretty good. Once I did that, finished gluing up all the rest of the model, and with that, like this top piece actually glues on, so we glued that on there. And then from there, masked off everything that needed to be masked off, and took this out to my paint area in my garage, got it all painted green. And with this, actually, I just used regular Rust-Oleum. It's a Rust-Oleum green, and it's a textured green, so you get kind of that textured look. I thought it was kind of cool looking, so I wanted to do it for my kit, and that's how we got that green look. After I did that, I came in here and I painted the whole inside black. And once I got the inside all painted black, I covered, you know, I masked off over my magnets so I didn't get any paint on there. Painted everything solid black. Now the interior was kind of tricky, and I had to do a little bit differently on each of them because each of these model kits was different. Like this is a Revell over here. This is an AMT, and that is for this guy here. And then this guy over here is this bad boy, and this is also an AMT. So these two are AMTs, but this Revell's different. I can't really say if I liked one over the other on how I assembled it. Some of them took a little bit more work, like this bad boy here, and we'll get to that one. With the interior, I had to cut out the entire bottom here of the interior. So what I did is I got everything kind of put into place to where I wanted it, not glued, but kind of got it fit in there, and basically was setting it on top of here, trying to figure out how low I can go and what I need to trim off, and basically ended up needing to trim all that off because I do have an outrunner motor and that motor does spin. And when it does, we don't want it rubbing on anything, and so trim that out. So that kind of took away from the floorboard of it, but when it's running, and you can't really tell the difference when it's driving by, that it's got the interior in it. Painted everything a sand, that actually I used interior sand. So you can buy, Rust-Oleum has a, it's an interior style that you can use on flexible, and actually it works on Lexan bodies. My wife's 4Runner that's up there that you can see in the back corner is done in that paint, and I didn't put any clear coat on underneath it. I just used that, and matter of fact, I will put a link in the description to that paint if you guys want to try it. I haven't had any issues with using it. I've used it on that body only though. So I used it on the inside here to get kind of that the tan interior, so it's a green and tan. Painted the steering wheel by hand using a black acrylic paint, and after all that dried, I glued the steering wheel in place, and then I put all of this in using CA glue, got it pushed up in there, glued everything down, and then went with some black acrylic paint and just painted the edges around this interior black, so it kind of matched everything else, including underneath the seat here. Got that painted black. And actually I missed putting the windows in. I did put the windows in first using CA glue, and then the interior. Sorry about that. Then I started cutting out some of the chrome and gluing chrome in, gluing the door handles, gluing the mirrors, got the bumpers put on and glued. And then I got all that done and realized I missed one important thing. I missed the rear view mirror in it. So I do have the rear view mirror in there, which you could probably see here. Got it in there, but the side windows here, there's no side windows on this model. So I used a set of tweezers and got some glue and kind of positioned it in there and got that bad boy glued into place. So heck, saved it. I didn't have to try to pull the interior out to get that rear view mirror in. Now, I did notice something kind of cool, that these bumpers on the backside, you can actually see the back of the grill here. I think I could probably drill those out and put little LED lights in the heads there and actually get these headlights to actually turn on. So that might be coming. I'm going to try that. I actually have another model kit that I'm not using that I can test out the bumper on and see how that works. And see, which is another one of these Revell styles. So we'll see how that goes. Now for the bed. I talked a little bit about this in my live on it, but when it came down to this bed, to try to get it to look like I do, where it's kind of that wood coloring, to get that wood coloring, this was done very on the fly. Now I did watch Scale Builders Guilds on how to do the weathering and make things look like wood. Watched his video on that. So I kind of winged it. I basically started off with a tan base and I painted it the same color as the interior to get a solid base coat on it. And then after that dried, then I went ahead and started using my acrylic paints. And with my acrylic paints, I used a dark brown and put a kind of a thin layer over the top of that to where you could still kind of see the tan on it, and then started highlighting it, taking some of my tan and a lighter shade of brown and just kind of putting some brush strokes in certain areas. And then once I did that, I took the dark brown and I put a very thin coat of that. Now I mixed it like 50-50 with some water. So got it mixed up to kind of, thin it out a little bit. So it's kind of like what they call like a whitewash or a water wash. And then put a coat of that on there. And then put a second coat. And I actually put, I think 3 coats across the top here, and to make that happen, and it turned out looking pretty dang good. And you get that kind of, it looks kind of like a wood bottom that's kind of old and weathered. So there you go. All right, so I have my my Sky RC corner weight system that connects up to my phone. This is the wireless one, so you can kind of space it out and figure out what your weighting is. And we are going to go ahead and get things started up. So if you guys can kind of see, we are tiered. Everything is zeroed out. And they are labeled like RR for right rear, RF for right front. So we got them up there. And when you go ahead, and I'm going to take a screenshot of it and put it up there. I'll put it up on the screen right above me up here so you guys can see it. But looking at this, so we're setting in the front. We're setting at 343 grams in the front. We're setting at 237 grams in the rear, with a total weight of the entire rig at 580.3 grams, which is kind of heavy per se, but a lot of that is body weight. Now, the awesome thing about it is if you look at it, so the front weight, I'm setting at a 59%, and on the rear weight, I'm setting at a 41%. So I am really close to that 60-40 split that we really want. And I'm not going to change it. Now, if you look from left to right, we're looking at total weight left, 291.3 grams, and on the right, we're at 289 grams. So we are setting a little bit heavier on the left. And a lot of that would probably be equated to my electronics setup and how the weight is there. The receiver that I use in here, when it comes to where the connection points are, they're more on that left side. That could equate to it. I tried to accommodate by putting more of the wire routing on the right side, but it wasn't enough. So not a really big deal. Looking at everything else, this is awesome. I mean, we'll see how it performs, and we'll go from there. With that being said, you have any questions, jump down in the comment section and let me know. I'd be happy to answer them. We're going to be doing some live streaming, so you can always jump into there. We're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff in my live streams. So not just RCs, but other hobbies and life. So you're more than welcome to jump in on those live streams and be looking for them. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bash that bell. I am Stitch, SK Hobbies AZ, and I'm out.